Hello, and welcome back to the Dream Architect Life podcast. Today is a topic and an episode that you are absolutely going to want to give your full attention to. We're talking cybersecurity. We are talking global crisis, and we are talking what you can do to help protect yourself and your family. So today's guest, first I have with me Scott Augenbaum. With over 30 years of FBI experience in cybercrime investigations and author of The Secret to Cybersecurity, Scott brings unparalleled insights and practical strategies to prevent cyber threats. Scott is the foremost expert in educating businesses, high net worth individuals, and families on the current threat environment. Scott focuses on how to prevent a cyber threat because after investigating over 1,000 cyber crimes, he knows all too well that recovering stolen money and data is almost impossible. In addition to his experience with the FBI, Scott is called on by Fox News, USA Today, Newsmax, and many other major media outlets as their resident cybersecurity expert. I also have with me Kevin Donahue. Kevin has 25 years of experience working in enterprise technology solutions, cybersecurity, and with high net worth individuals as an executive and entrepreneur. Kevin's clients have included the White House, National Security Council, CIA, U.S. Security Service, World Bank, U.S. Department of Homeland Security, and many more high-profile organizations, and has worked on some of the highest profile investigations in the past 20 years. Kevin is founder of Stealth Executive, Stealth Family, and together with his partner Scott, is on a mission to help protect 1 million families from being victims of cyber criminals. Let's get into the show. Kevin, Scott, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having us. We appreciate it, Brittany. Nice to see you.
Great to be here.
Well, I will tell you, this is one conversation that I have been so looking forward to because I think it's interesting, it's different, and it's needed. So if you could start, and maybe Kevin, I'll have you jump off here. Can you just talk a little bit about what brought you into the world of cybersecurity and maybe what makes what you guys do a little bit different than what you hear about in the day-to-day?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, and thanks for having us on the show. I spent a career in technology, mostly on the enterprise side, and I come from the Washington, D.C. area, so my clients were sort of the who's who of Washington, everyone from the White House to the CIA to the FBI to the Secret Service. There wasn't a big investigation that I wasn't a part of back in the 2000 timeframe, everything from Enron to when AIG Financial Products Division was getting in trouble on Wall Street, et cetera, et cetera. So, the focus then was how do we help the enterprise? How do we help these large organizations either audit themselves or the investigative agencies investigate these financial crimes? So that really got me into technology. I have a degree in criminal justice, so I studied law enforcement and investigations and these types of things. But I would say it was about 5 or 6 years ago, cyber became a very big deal. It used to be an organization would have a CIO, which means Chief Information Officer, and they would be responsible for all technology. Well, what's happened in the last decade or so is a new executive emerged, and that's called the Chief Information Security Officer, or CISO, CISO. And this is a completely different skill set. This is very focused on data privacy, securing the data, the wealth of the organization, putting up basically a fortress, everything, protecting from cyber crimes, both internationally and internally. And so I got into that business. And then maybe about 2 or 3 years ago, Brittany, I've been in the world of high net worth individuals running and being part of high level mastermind groups. I just noticed that there was a gap in the marketplace. And that gap was with high net worth individuals, in particular family offices. These people were highly skilled at growing wealth, preserving wealth, looking at long-term assets and short-term assets in the future to grow wealth. But the cyber piece was completely in their blind spot. So I started giving talks at some of these large organizations and events where there was high net worth individuals, even ultra high net worth individuals. And really, people were like, what do I do? I'm scared. And it wasn't just that. I would start to get the phone calls. oh, I had a $1.3 million loss. Someone hacked into an old email address of mine and transferred $1.3 million of investment capital to China. And so I just saw that there was a real big need here. And then Scott was introduced to me through the chief information security officer of the largest bank in Tennessee. And we became fast friends, and we partnered up and we said, hey, we can tackle this issue. And so we've come up with a solution that basically educates first, because what we know is the largest vulnerability in any organizations, I don't care what technology you have in place, is always human beings. We forget to change our passwords. We don't have two-factor authentication, or we click on a link and suddenly the entire organization is compromised or your entire home is compromised. So that's kind of the origin story here and why we're here. Of course, I met you a couple years ago and we had a conversation, I think it was this last December, and you said, wow, this might be this is a very important topic for us to have a conversation. So now Scott and I have a business that focuses on the family. Like, how do you protect your most important asset, your family? So we've chunked down this large enterprise thing where if you go to any big corporation in America, they have the people, processes, and technology in place. And we've chunked it down to make it available to basically your average family. And our focus is the high net worth and ultra high net worth families and family offices.
Mm-hmm. So I think that, first of all, the journey here, I think, is a really interesting one, and identifying the gaps. You've talked about the involvement of, call it cybercrime or cybersecurity issues over the last handful of years. The bottom line is the people out there are getting even more savvy. And, we've seen this with some of our clients and things that they've experienced. We've seen this in some of our business owner friends and clients who have had to take maybe extra precautionary measures, who have had some scares and different things like that. So, Scott, I'm going to flip this one to you. You have got, 30 plus years of experience with the FBI, and you have seen just about everything there is to see. So can you maybe share a couple examples of where people were blindsided or they didn't see it coming, and the aftershock or the after effect, and maybe how you could help prevent some of those things from happening as we move forward?
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me on. And I want to ask you, Brittany, have you ever sat down with someone who lost their entire life savings to
No, I can't even
cybercriminals?
imagine.
Well, during my decades with the FBI, that is what I did. Spent 30 years with the FBI, retired in 2018. And I touched almost 1,000 cybercrime victims during my decades with the FBI. I retired in 2018. I didn't think the problem could really get any worse. And back in 2018, we were at almost a $2 trillion global problem. And today it's an $8 trillion problem. And the problem keeps getting worse and worse every single day. And at the same time, we keep spending more and more money on staying safe. So if we had two charts here, we'd have one chart with the problem getting worse and another chart with us spending more and more money. So what does that mean to you in the world of wealth and finance? What does it mean if you keep spending money and the problem keeps getting worse?
I mean, that's not a good thing.
It's a horrible thing. And one of the things that I discovered after touching these 1,000 or so victims, and let me just tell you the story about someone we'll call Steve. Steve was a high net worth individual. He isn't anymore, because here's a gentleman who worked his entire life. He's in his 70s and he's online and he meets someone on LinkedIn who happens to be a very attractive female who talks to him about getting rich in the world of cryptocurrency. And, he has this fear of missing out. So he engages in this conversation. It's a very platonic conversation. This individual, who is a cyber criminal, spends weeks grooming him. And he's like, look, I don't understand cryptocurrency. And she's like, don't worry about it. Go to the Apple store and download this app. He downloads the app on his phone and she says, look, it's simulated trading. We're going to play with make-believe money. I'm going to put $10,000 of make-believe money, and then we're going to have training nods, and they trade 4 times a day. So they turn $10,000 into $90,000, and it turns into $275,000 instantaneously. So he goes, wow, this is really good. So she goes, you want to try with some real money? Just try with $500. So he puts 500, he sends her $500, and it's in the app, which the app is controlled by the cyber criminals, and it's nothing more than a calculator. So he sends her the money, and they say 500, and then it increases to 3,000. So he goes, wow, I made 5 times the money. He keeps putting it in. Have you ever heard of a term called pig butchering?
I have. We are actually in the hog capital USA, but I don't think we're talking about the same thing here.
No, we're not talking about that. It's Chinese organized crime, which is fattening the hog, okay, before you slaughter it. So one thing leads to another. He keeps putting money in. I get introduced to Steve by a friend of his who we went to high school with. And this guy calls me and says, hey, my buddy needs $250,000 to get money out of a crypto account. They played him so well that at the end of the day, he's out $5.7 million. And here's what happens. Law enforcement's not getting the money back. It's hard to put these people in jail. But if Kevin and I could have sat down with him and explained a couple of things to him before this happened, we could have changed the outcome. And that's almost with 1,000 of my victims. And that's why I'm a big education guy. That's what I do now. I build education programs for individuals. I build them for Fortune 500 companies. And there's really a gap in the market, because if 90% could be protected, why don't we just do that stuff? And that's why I partnered with Kevin, and we are really trying to create a new category today in the marketplace.
Hey, Brittany here. In case you hadn't heard, our latest book, Dream Architecture, is available for the taking. Think about it like this. What is your biggest, wildest dream of what retirement could look like? Not the dream that your friends have, or your parents maybe had, or your coworkers. Your best dream, the unreasonable one, the one that you might have trouble admitting even to yourself. So that is what the Dream Architecture book is about. Hop on over to dreamarchitecturebook.com so you can start dreaming big today. I think that that early education and you having such a high emphasis on education is so important for people. And I think one of the things that was fascinating, Kevin, when you and I were talking, about a year ago, call it, the ways that people are taken advantage of is interesting. Even if you're not the risky crypto trader who is engaging with an attractive person on the other end, there are ways that people are taken advantage of that they don't even see coming. So Kevin, can you touch on that, and maybe Scott add to it, as we go?
Yeah, of course. And I'll give your listeners and viewers a tip here. We're all familiar with phishing, which is email phishing, where people send links and drive us to bad sites, or so they can infect our computers or our systems. There's smishing, which is SMS phishing. We're all getting texts from the UPS or USPS or whoever. And they're getting more and more clever. I got one the other day, was like, are you still here? It was just like it was supposed to be a friend texting me. And the other that is really important that your listeners or viewers may not know of is called quishing, and it's QR code phishing. What these cyber criminals, it's not that they're great technologists, it's that they're genius social engineers. You see, your average hackers in your system between 6 and 18 months before they take any action. They're watching the communications, and they're going to mock the communication, whether it's a text message or an email, and then they'll mock your email. They'll have an email that's 1 letter off or 1 dot off, but they're going to communicate in your style of communication to the people that you love most or that you work with most. And then, of course, with AI voice, this becomes even more difficult, because now you're getting a text message or a voice message or a call from your mother, your boss, your uncle, your whoever, and that's the way these criminals are really doing it. So part of the education piece is just understanding the threat environment. The way I like to put it is a lot of the threat environment is currently in your blind spot. So it's back here, you just can't see it. So just with a little bit of education, by listening to this program, some of the stuff's gonna be put in your periphery. So you'll have an awareness, but we like to do an education program that puts it right in front of your face. And what we say is anyone in your home who has a mobile device or a gaming console needs to take at a minimum the first 3 modules of our training program that Scott puts together from an FBI agent, right? And then of course we have the elderly. So these are the most vulnerable folks that can really put at risk your greatest asset. And then, of course, everyone else in the family, because we're naive. We're really good at what we do in the world, at our careers, and we just kind of forget. We kind of go through life, and then life passes us by, and these cyber criminals are getting more and more sophisticated. There's entire corporations in India, in China, in Jamaica. Their whole entire they train these people for years on how to be genius social engineers and how to steal your money. And for them, if they get $5,000 out of you, that's a year's salary, or 2 years' salary for some of them. So really, the important part is awareness. And so, and it's not just the money, Brittany. It's also the stress, the violation that you feel, the emotional damage. All of these things come into this. It's like, my gosh, what do I have to do? You walk around the world. When someone steals your identity, your money, or anything, you feel violated. So, there's like simple ways too, is are you monitoring the dark web for breaches? Audi was breached a while back. And if you have an Audi and you get it serviced at the Audi dealership, well, guess what? Your information's for sale, your home address, your phone number, medical records are, of course, of greatest value. And so those are always hacked and then it's sold on the dark web. Do you have a virtual private network in your home? Like certain little things that you can do that can prevent a lot of this. And of course, what we say is education first, just so you're aware, and then take the proper steps to put together a solution to protect your family and your loved ones, and of course, your business as well.
And it's all about the mindset, Brittany. And when we're dealing with these stuffs, we're trying to change people's mindsets. And after dealing with 1,000 cybercrime victims, I discovered something that I call the 4 truths of cybersecurity. And this is the first truth is none of my victims ever expected to be a victim. Why would anybody target me? I don't fit the victim profile. It's kind of like when I talk to my mother, she says to me, Scott, I don't understand. Why are you carrying on? I only have $1,500 in my bank account. And I say, Mom, what if you didn't have $1,500? What if they took it from you? So the cyber criminals do not care who you are. They want access to your stuff. There is no such thing as a threat profile. If you have kids, if you have senior parents, if you have a bank account, they're going to target you. When you are targeted, the chances of law enforcement recovering your money or helping you when your child's the victim of sextortion is really challenging. I've been there for victims. And putting the bad guys in jail is really, really tough, but the majority of these subjects are located overseas. You take that, that's really discouraging. But the thing that I learned and the big epiphany that I had is a majority of the cybercrime victimizations could have been prevented if my end users were only armed with a couple of key pieces of knowledge. You take that knowledge, you take some real key pieces of technology that fill that gap. That doesn't exist today on the market.
Yeah, and part of this is that all criminals are criminals of opportunity. They're opportunists. So it's like do the things, lock your doors. They'll go by and check. Even in my neighborhood, they'll check the door handles of cars, and if you don't lock your car and you leave your car fob key in the car, they'll take off with your car. But if your car is locked, they'll just go on to the next one. So I think part of this is being armed with an understanding of what the threat environment is, but also just doing the little things, making sure that your home, your windows are locked and that your doors are locked and that you're safe and that your family's safe. I tell people from elementary school on, we all go through fire drills and we all know exactly what to do. We line up and we go out, we know where to go. But no one knows what to do if there's a cyber crime. If you're a victim of sexploitation, a lot of young people right now, sexploitation is a big one. Someone will pose as a pretty girl or a guy on Facebook or social media, and they'll friend a lot of your friends, and then they'll, sextort the kids. And unfortunately, the suicide rate is through the roof. A lot of parents don't know this. So a lot of it is about becoming a digital parent, but then knowing what to do when something happens. Because what happens, Brittany, if you find out someone has compromised your identity and they're applying for credit cards, or that they've taken money from you? Are you going to call the cops? You're going to call the local authorities? They're not going to be able to help you. They just don't have the resources, and they don't know what to do, quite frankly. We're going to call the FBI. I mean, Scott worked with the FBI. He will tell you it's very difficult to go after these folks. Same with U.S. Secret Service. They prosecute a lot of these, or they investigate a lot of these crimes. So I think part of it is being educated, doing the little things so that you're protected, with technology, making sure that the data broker sites, because there's over 500 data broker sites out there selling your information today. We have a service that we take down that data all the time. We're monitoring the dark web. We're taking down that data, and then having someone to go to. Think about that right now, Brittany. Who would you call if you were the victim of a cybercrime? I mean, besides me.
Yeah, you guys, that's it.
Yeah, it's important to have that resource. And I think for what you guys do, especially when you put on events and you have mastermind meetings with high net worth individuals, your members are looking to you for these types of resources. Sometimes it's a CPA, sometimes it's an expert in tax, sometimes it's someone that's an expert in international trading, or whatever it may be. But they're looking to you for, hey, who's a resource we can go to for cybersecurity expertise for my business, for my family office or my multifamily office, and for my home. Currently, cybersecurity with YPO, EO, Vistage, Tiger 21, these big groups is top 3 for speaker requests. And so Scott is in high demand. We're actually putting on a seminar up outside of Chicago for a community bank. And they're going to bring all their customers and members in to have a conversation about how do I protect my family. It's the future. This is where all the crime is happening. And like Scott mentioned, it's an $8 to $10 trillion a year business right now.
And they're going after, and so many of us have these concerns because you have to keep yourself and your business safe. And there's a lot of cybersecurity awareness that's really designed for that. But what about your kids? What about your elderly parents? And, when I'm going in here and people are telling me, well, look, we're doing our phishing videos. And I'm like, well, that's great. But phishing is part of social engineering. Social engineering is tricking people into doing something they normally wouldn't do. So when I'm sitting here and talking to chief information security officers of companies, publicly traded, and I go, what are you doing to talk about the 8 different types of social engineering attempts? Because as soon as you lock down your email, they're going to go for your text messages. You're going to get a text message. Just the other day, I had an individual who contacted me because they got a text message from the bank saying that somebody was trying to illegally get into their account and trying to send out money. Please click on the link to log in. They logged in with username and password. Bad guy emptied out the account. If you're not going to do that, they're going to get you with a telephone call with artificial intelligence telling you to do something. You have, as Kevin alluded earlier, you have quishing, which is scanning QR codes. We have social media account hijacking on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Twitter. We're looking at a couple of weeks ago, I just had someone had a request. Their iPhone was broken. They typed in iPhone repair on Google. They went to the first sponsored result because that has to be good, right? It's a sponsored result that was paid for with a cyber criminal with a stolen credit card who actually was able to scam these people out of $16,000. Or what about the pop-ups that we get on our computer? And I have stories on each of these things because that's what really convinces people. When I'm talking to you, through our training, we're trying to get you to think about the psychological implications and what would happen if you do this. Would your elderly parent do this? Do you know who to call? So it's putting that together and the technology that's so effective. Because unfortunately, when I left the FBI, everyone said to me, Scott, where are you going to get your information from? I get calls every day from victims. And unfortunately, when you contact me as a victim, I'll talk to you, but I'm almost like hospice. There's very little that we could do. We'll make you feel better. We'll tell you it's not your fault. But if Kevin and I could get with people before they became victimized, we could have changed the complete landscape and we could have prevented a lot of victimizations.
Yeah, so there is one aspect that my head keeps bouncing to as you're talking through some of these scenarios, and that is romance scams. And, I know that in our industry as a whole, we've seen this happen in real life. You get somebody who has maybe been widowed, they've lost a spouse, they're lonely, and this person on the other end is saying all the right things, convincing them that just a few more dollars and they'll be able to be together. So I guess my question isn't necessarily around more stories of this, but more so if you are a family member, a friend, an advisor, somebody who's watching this happen, who you can see it clearly from a different lens than the person that is being victimized. What do you do? What do you say? How do you get people to see that, hey, this isn't real and you're being taken advantage of?
The hardest part is convincing victims. I mean, that they are victimized. We have a lot of reasons. And, I wrote a whole chapter in my book about romance scams. I've dealt with hundreds of these people, and none of them, even at the time, they still are holding out. Their money is gone and their hopes for love are gone. And that's one of the things that we cover so much in what we do, because a lot of this stuff is we're trying to get people to think rational instead of emotional, right, Kevin?
Yeah, and they're playing on emotions. And this is social engineering at its best. It's urgent. It's I love you. Don't you believe in God? These are the types of things. The Nigerian 419 scams are the classic ones. I had a meeting yesterday with a gentleman whose father is 86 years old, and he's caught up in a scam, and he's lost about $350,000 so far. And so I told him, I said, listen, have Scott get on the phone with your father. And because you're talking to a FBI agent, a retired supervisory agent from the FBI, to let him know and to talk him off the cliff. Now, the gentleman did tell me yesterday that his mother, who's also 86, yelled at his father. She hadn't yelled at him since he was about 5 years old. And he goes, I think he might have finally gotten it. But this is a scam that's been going on for about 6 to 8 months so far. And I think he said $350,000 loss. So that's part of it. Brittany, the other piece too is we talk about these kind of dark, mysterious figures out on the dark web. We talk about, you hear in the news about these state actors like China and Russia or wherever they may be. But, there's also, most crime is committed by people someone's going through a divorce or they've had a breakup. Especially these young like athletes. We deal with some professional athletes who are new millionaires. And it's, one of the things we preach about is just make sure you have two-factor authentication on all of your social media. Because, just one bad actor can destroy your reputation and you can't earn that kind of money anymore. And a lot of times they're naive. So, we have to be concerned if we're going through a divorce. Have we changed our passwords? If you've broken up with someone recently, have you changed your passwords? If you have a child who is, maybe addicted to drugs and will do anything for money, whatever it may be. So we have to protect ourselves also from the threat that's right there in our home or in our neighborhood. You can get ransomware as a service off the dark web for $50 a month now. So we have 14, 15, 16-year-olds out there that are committing major cyber crimes, and they could be driving through a high net worth neighborhood and say, I'm going to target this person and this person and this person, right? So I think we have to be cognizant of the ever-changing threat landscape and who is out there. And it's, you don't want to live in fear. We certainly don't. You just want to be aware, and you want to be able to let your family know what is going on out there so you're not suddenly a victim. Like Scott said, no one ever expects to be a victim, ever. And then it becomes even more devastating when they are.
And Kevin, you said one thing that really hit me because I get this a lot. And they're, I do a lot of conferences and people come back and they go, Scott, you really scared me. And I'm like, good, that's great. But I'm not here to scare you. We're here to empower you. Because if 90% of what I've dealt with easily could have been prevented, just do it. Like, here's the list, realize that social engineering is the #1 tool in the cyber criminals tool belt. Are you using the same password for multiple platforms? 66% of the population is using the same password for multiple platforms. There's billions of usernames and passwords on the dark web. Have you identified what are your mission critical platforms? Because I've seen in family offices that someone's Facebook account gets compromised, they steal username and password, then they get into the email, then they get into the bank account and the website. And because they're not using separate, robust passwords. And here's this most surefire way for me. If you're a victim or not, are you using two-factor authentication on all of your remote accounts? And, those 5 things here really make up a majority of the cybercrime victimization. But it's the same thing like losing weight. Hey, imagine if I just exercised more and ate less. That would really work, but I'm going to go spend all this money on all these different crazy, shiny whistles and bells and new kinds of routines. And all we're trying to do is being able to reinforce that knowledge. So one of the things that we do in our training is we're sending out reminder quick videos weekly, just on a new scam. And it's really starting out with a question. Do you have two-factor authentication on all of your remote access? Let me tell you a story about someone whose life was ruined. Quick, to the point, and that's it. It's reinforcing the material, almost as like being there as your friend, your mentor, and your coach to remind you that you don't have to be the next victim.
Mm. I think there's so much to unpack in all that you both just shared. I think about my own situation. I think I was 19 years old and I had a close family member open a credit card in my name and go over the limit and not pay the bills. And all of a sudden it waterfalled into something that I was a teenager and I had to deal with. So again, I think all of these, as we go through, and anybody that's listening, you can think of stories in your own life, whether it's you or a family member or a loved one who has encountered something like this. The second part of it too is as we, serve different, our wonderful clients and their families, one of the biggest questions we get is what additional resources can we put in front of our children? How do we protect our wealth for generations to come? And I think what you're talking about here is so often overlooked. We know it's an issue. We know that it's out there. We know that the problems are there, but there's not enough that's being put out there to be done about it and to be proactive with it. So I think that is one of the beautiful things about what you guys do. So I'd love to go to an even grander scale that's maybe a little bit more recent that we experienced in the world a couple of weeks ago, and that is the whole meltdown after the CrowdStrike debacle, where we had planes that couldn't take off and banks that couldn't do business as usual. So I think that that's one of those things that you feel like, oh yeah, it happened to them, but it's maybe not going to happen to me. I just would love some commentary on what happened just recently here, at least at the time of recording.
Yeah, and so that would be an example of macro, right? This is
Yeah.
worldwide, global shutdown. There's not much you can do about that personally, and that's sort of out of our realm of control. So you always have to chunk it down to, hey, what can I do to protect my family? What can I do to protect my business? And Brittany, you're familiar with Ben Hardy and Dan Sullivan, and this is a who, not how, right? Or Dean Jackson as well. That's his concept. This is a who, not how. Like, who can I go to that can that I can call when something like this happens? So if it's a CrowdStrike incident, who's on your team that can explain this to you? Who can chunk it down to make it make sense for you, right? Because we might say, hey, turn off the news. It'll go back to normal. We can help you locally and make sure that you have all the things in place that we've recommended. So I think it's having a resource to go to. And I know Scott had quite a bit of commentary on that meltdown. So Scott, if you want to kind of give
Yeah,
some.
because everyone's like, okay, what do I do in a situation like this? And unfortunately, there are many things in our lives we can't avoid when it comes to the supply chain. AT&T in Nashville went down. What do you do when the backbone goes down? Like, wow. I mean, you're kind of crippled. What do you do if your electricity goes down? I mean, there are certain things, but there are things that we kind of have control over, like backing up our own data. A lot of people go like this. I always tell people, what would happen if you lost your iPhone and you're a business person? You're going to lose all your contacts? When was the last time you backed up your iPhone? When was the last time you backed up your computer? Do you have enough? And, I hate to say it, because I used to laugh at the preppers. I used to laugh at the preppers. And now I go over here and I'm like, I actually ordered I'm embarrassed to say this. I ordered a cell phone charge, a solar powered charger. What are you going to do if something happens in those types of things? What happens if your computer goes down? Have we thought about it? Like for business continuity planning, especially for our businesses, what are the core platforms that we use as a business? What would we do? What would we do if our QuickBooks went down? Has anyone even thought about that? What if our CRM went down? Little things like that. And that's what we're trying to do now is come up with some points. It's not rocket science. It really isn't. Just things that you could do just in case this situation happens to you.
Yeah, Scott nailed it. Business continuity planning, especially for the family office and the multifamily office. I actually facilitate the Chief Information Security Officer peer group for the Nashville Tech Council, and it's the who's who. It's the CISO of Asurion, Alliance Bernstein, Bridgestone, Vanderbilt, and the discussions we have and their ransomware planning. Some of these folks, like Alliance Bernstein, they go back to pen and paper. We have to manage our clients' wealth. Okay, no computers. And they practice this quarterly, Brittany, because they've got, I don't know how much under management, billions and billions, right? So it's like how business continuity is critical. Now, like I mentioned before, how do you chunk that down to your family? And it's funny, we have a lot of resources, including we work with some former Navy SEALs who, they focus on, the shit hits the fan type of stuff, right? So that's not our focus. So we have a who if that happens. So yeah, that's the business continuity is a really
Yeah, and
critical.
there's certain things you can't avoid. Like, listen, I don't know what to tell you when all of a sudden the Delta goes down and you're waiting for a flight, I mean, unfortunately, but in situations like that, even when we're traveling, I just did a tip on LinkedIn on what to do when there's certain things when we say like having the mindset. So like just quickly when you're flying, what am I doing? Don't use the USB chargers there. Bring a portable battery pack. If you're going to be using the free airport Wi-Fi, sometimes you have to do that. Use a VPN. I shut off I try not to. I'm not connecting to the Wi-Fi's. I'm trying to shut my Bluetooth off unless I have my Bluetooth headsets on. Because it's so amazing that when you're out there, you can see all these people. A skilled hacker could get into your computer, and always make sure that you have your AirDrop turned off or only on contacts. It's just having little things like even when you're traveling. And I know Kevin came up with a great thing on the family code word, Kevin.
Oh yeah, I'm glad you reminded me. Putting it together a family code word or a code question, and this is so that you can authenticate who's on the other end of the line. Because with voice AI, people can actually mock your voice and they could copy your voice and talk in your voice. So we just want to be sure that everyone in the family, and it becomes sort of a fun game. Like my wife, if I say, how many elephants are in the zoo? Maybe my wife's answer is purple monkeys. My son's answer is green tigers, right? Things that social engineers can't engineer, right? They're not able, you don't email the secret code question, you don't text it, you only talk about it over a family dinner. So it's like one of these fun things that you create that becomes sort of a fun family game. And you can kind of play around with it, and it just becomes something that can be important, can save you a lot of heartache in the end. The other thing that we've been doing the last few years as a service is what we call stealth threat assessments. And these are to check the people who you're partnering with, check the people who you're investing with. We've done some work with some high net worth individuals who are looking to make some investments in what they thought was a bond trading operation. We did a background check. The guy hired us. We did a stealth threat assessment on the guy who was running it, and we gave him back a 37-page dossier. And we said, probably not a good idea. Now, whether he were to move forward with that or not, that's up to him. But we're able to give them the intelligence. Some of our folks are international intelligence folks, so we can pull information from foreign countries, from all over the world. So if you're in the marketplace and you want to check out maybe a business partner or someone, anyone at all, we're able to do that as well. Because like you mentioned, someone in your family stole your identity and, applied for a credit card. Who are you allowing into your business or into your family office? Who are your contractors? Have you done the due diligence? And that's really
How
what this
about the
is.
story about the woman getting married, the lady in Brazil?
Yeah. Well, we were contacted by someone whose daughter met a Brazilian guy, real handsome guy, swept her off her feet, and they were engaged and be married within a few months, right? And so they contacted us. They said, "Hey, we just want to check this guy out." And so I put my guys to work, and it turns out he seems to be a fine guy, but we checked him out, his family out. And these are the types of things too that are important. And who is
Yeah,
your
but the
who?
moral of the story is don't call us the day before the wedding.
Well, yeah, that too, right there. Yeah, she was like last minute. She's like, my daughter's getting married on Friday, but I was actually able to pull some data back.
Like,
It was a Wednesday. Yeah. But so anyway, these odd things like who is your who when it comes to cybersecurity, even physical security. We have resources that can do that as well. Some of these folks work with ultra high net worth individuals as their security details. So yeah, I think part of this is really, are you doing the due diligence? Are you educating yourself? And do you have the technology in place that keeps you and your family safe? And I always say that's your most important asset, your family. It's why we save. It's why we invest. It's for our family. That's what it boils down to. And Scott and I's goal right now is to protect 1 million families in the next 5 years. That's our big, hairy goal. Hopefully more than that as word gets out, but that's what we're shooting to do.
I think that is absolutely beautiful. And, gentlemen, as people are listening to this and they're going, okay, we get it. We want to make sure that we're proactive. How do they reach out to you? How do they learn more about how you can serve them? What's really the next step?
Sure. I'm going to give you two websites. Our company is called Stealth Executive, Stealth Family. So if anyone here goes to stealthfamily.com, that will actually route to our technology partner. I just have it going to as a link to our technology partner, which will provide all of the technology needed, which is antivirus, VPN, virtual private network, dark web monitoring, data broker takedown, and that technology protects all of your devices, and goes across all of your family members as well. That's our easy button when it comes to the tech. And if you go to makemestealth.com, that's our website. You can just reach out to us there, and you'll kind of see what our service offerings are. And if it's something you want to engage, we're happy to do a presentation for your family office, for the families. And we do provide enterprise services. So for a multifamily office, you're looking to do one thing we say for an enterprise is at least a risk assessment once a year, and potentially a penetration test where we have ethical hackers. We try to break in, but we're the good guys, right? So we come in, we try to break into your system, and then we do a gap analysis, and then we just fix the gaps. In other words, we test the doors, we test the windows, then we lock them down. And so we do that as well for the family office. The distinction here is we would say a family office is the enterprise and the family is, of course, the family. And we're able to protect both. So sort of top down, when we engage with a family office or a multifamily office, we engage with the folks that are managing everything, and then we engage with the families as well. Does that make sense?
It does. And if you could just give that website, that last
Sure.
one more time, it cut out just a little bit when you said it.
Okay, it's makemestealth.com.
Awesome. Makemestealth.com. So Scott, Kevin, I so appreciate your genius, your experience, and your time here with us today. We know time is the precious commodity that we can't make more of. So thank you for being on the show. Is there anything that I didn't ask you that I should have?
Scott?
I don't have any short answers or questions, so we'll let it go with that. Look forward. You know,
Yeah.
I can't answer a yes or no question without a story about a victim. That's the problem. But thank you really for exposing us to your audience.
Yeah, and I think this is a service it's a great service that you can share with all the folks, and they can share this with their family and their kids, you know. And so I think it's really important to have this conversation. It's one of these conversations that's in the blind spot of a lot of folks, or maybe they've heard about it and they read about it. So just a couple of things that we mentioned on here, if you take action on them, where you'll make yourself safe. And if you reach out to us, we're always happy to have a conversation with you and your family or your family office. And yeah, stay tuned.
Awesome. Well, that wraps up today's episode of the Dream Architect Life podcast. If you liked what you heard and you want to impact other people in your life, be sure to forward it. Also, like and subscribe so that you are the first to know when the next episode drops. We'll catch you right back here next time.